Welcome back. Well, this weekend, Naomi Bloom as well as John Payne joining us for a marketing discussion. All right, we're waiting this big prospective plantings report coming out from USDA next week. A lot of acreage projections being released ahead of that. But Naomi, what kind of is priced into the market right now? What does the trade expect next week?
Well, trade is definitely expecting that we're going to see less corn acres planted than last year. The biggest takeaway is that there's going to be some ebb and flow throughout what comes on the report. But the big picture, keep in mind that even if we plant 3 million less acres of corn than last year, we're still going to be battling 2 billion bushel carryout into the next growing season. So that might keep the market just prices suppressed in the short term. For prices to rally significantly, we're going to need something to happen with Brazil weather, or some kind of a summer weather issue here in the United States later on in the summer.
John, we'll hit on Brazil in just a second, but when you look here in the US, there is some thoughts that we'll see less corn acres than what we saw last year. But still, when you look at some of the amount of field work that's gone on in this Western Corn Belt, possibly could see more corn acres than what many had expected earlier on. Do you think that could be the case?
Yeah, I've kind of come to expect the unexpected in this report. This is one that you can get the wild card. Then everybody looks forward to the June one when actually the acreage data gets put in. So I wouldn't shock me to see the USDA surprise a little bit here and keep the acreage up. I hear what Naomi's saying. I think the anecdotal evidence would be that you'd plant beans just given the prices. But farmers here like to plant corn in the U.S. and at this point, given the early spring we've had and the amount of, I would say inputs are down, certainly year over year, but even looking at natural gas, like Ford summer contracts are down for natty. So, irrigation costs should fall. I think you'll see corn acres somewhere close to where they were a year ago, at least off the jump. Now, whether we get it that way, I don't know. It certainly depends on weather over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, speaking of that, Naomi, we are watching weather. I mean, you're in the upper Midwest. You haven't had much of a winter, but now we are seeing kind of this winter late arrival that could change the picture in some areas.
Yeah, definitely. You look at the drought monitor index and the dryness throughout the Midwest continues to grow. So, yeah, snow this weekend for Wisconsin, not overly exciting or welcome. It's a little too late in the season, but the precipitation coming out of it is welcome because we are so dry and much of the Midwest, of course, dry. Now, looking forward for what that means for the corn crop and for going forward for the corn season, the market is very aware that we're on the cusp where either weather's going to switch into potentially a slightly wetter weather pattern, or there are some meteorologists who are saying that this might be something like a 1988 drought if the dryness continues. So trade is aware of that. It's watching it, but it's back burner information for now, but definitely something to be watching for the future.
Yeah, I was in Iowa this week, and that is the biggest, well, commodity prices, but then how dry it is. That is the
Yeah.
biggest concern for growers right now. All right, John, China's soybean imports from Brazil totaled 6.96 million metric ton during the first 2 months of the year. That is a 211% surge from a year ago. Just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind, Brazil had a tough crop a year ago. So I think a lot of that might be reflected in the short-term data. Crush margins here in the U.S. Are decent relative to where they were just a couple of weeks ago. And then you have the U.S. prices that should compete with the Brazilians through the summer. So you're starting to see that happen here. If you look out in the curve, you're seeing some convergence between the B3 prices and where the CBOT is offered. And I think at this point, you're seeing producers sell because of harvest. So we got a harvest low kind of behind us here in the Brazil markets. And now we'll look ahead. And I know it's 9 months away, but we got to start looking at what Brazil's going to do a year from now, because that's where you start to see the CBOT be a tool for those new crop producers in Brazil to start selling for what they're going to grow a year from now.
John, real quick before we go to break, I know you have offices down in Brazil. When you look at where USDA is currently on their projections for Brazil corn and soybeans, higher than a lot of private
Yeah.
estimates. Does it differ from where you guys currently sit?
No, we're close. We're closer to CONAB. I think at this point, the CONAB numbers are more what the trade would believe. At this point, though, we might lose 20 million metric tons in Brazil, but we're going to make 25 million more in Argentina. So I'm not sure how that all shakes out if that's apples to apples, but supply in South America should be okay, at least year over year.
All right. Well, we saw China come in and cancel more wheat buys from the U.S. We'll look at really the projections for wheat prices when we come back.